Chapter 1901, Loves Eastern Guangdong Cuisine. The high-ranking official from KG Kingdom came in person. After they arrived, they specifically requested that the Huashu Kingdom chef cook the same dishes as yesterday. This time, however, the high-ranking official made a request. "I really like Huashu cuisine, so I want to see the chef in person. Is that okay?" Olive frowned upon hearing this. Zhang Yi is not good at cooking, so if that official comes over to check, won't it be revealed? However, Zhang Yi was not at all panicked. If they want to see, let them come over. If they can't handle this kind of thing, forget about going to the KG Kingdom in advance. When you get there, won't this kind of thing happen more frequently? Olive didn't know what Zhang Yi planned to do, but seeing that he sounded so relaxed, he said, "Okay then." The high-ranking official from the KG Kingdom was welcomed to the kitchen by the hotel manager, and the two agents followed closely behind him. Zhang Yi pretended to be nervous and waited with the other chefs for them. The hotel manager was also on their side, and everyone in the kitchen had already said hello. Soon the official was brought to Zhang Yi. "Please cook now. Let me take a good look at your skills," said the middle-aged official with a gentle face. After all, he knew that if the chef in front of him was really very good and gained the favor of Commander Ken Sane, then in the future he would become a big shot in the KG Kingdom. In the KG Kingdom, a person's promotion depended entirely on the commander's liking. It had long been the norm for a person to go from rags to riches. "Yes, please wait a moment." Zhang Yi went to the counter, picked up the prepared ingredients directly, and began to chop the vegetables. He had no problem with the use of the sword at all, and his one-handed technique was very skilled. Seeing the way he chopped the vegetables, the official had already nodded his head in satisfaction. But the most difficult part was still cooking. Heat the oil in a pan, but don't turn up the heat too much, so as not to overheat. Add the spring onions, ginger and garlic and stir-fry. Yang Xia's voice came to Zhang Yi's ears as she directed him on the spot, and Zhang Yi followed her instructions for every step of the way. The most difficult part of cooking is mastering the heat. If you get the heat right, the flavor of the dish will not be a problem. North Fazhou is poor and backward, and no gourmets have ever eaten a Manchu Han imperial feast. According to Hyun Haesu, although Ken Sane is picky about what he eats, he has never eaten anything truly good. Otherwise, a cook like him, who cooks in a construction site canteen, would not have gained his appreciation. Therefore, even though Zhang Yi's skills were not yet polished, he was able to follow Yang Xia's instructions perfectly. Together with his exquisite knife skills, the Guangdong cuisine he made actually looked quite decent. The official from the KG Kingdom witnessed Zhang Yi's cooking skills with his own eyes, and his smile grew wider and wider. After tasting the meal, he directly called Zhang Yi over and handed him a red envelope on the spot. Inside was a material exchange voucher, which was also considered hard currency at the border. It was a thick stack, but it was a lot of money. "Thank you, esteemed sir." Zhang Yi acted like a greedy person and thanked him repeatedly. The official looked at him contentedly and, without directly inviting him, simply left after finishing his meal. Zhang Yi was confident, however, that his meal had won him over. After all, they couldn't find another cook who knew how to make Guangdong cuisine. As Zhang Yi expected, the other party then conducted a thorough investigation of his identity information. However, this information had already been collated by the Holy See of the Eastern Orthodox Church in the Khitan Empire, and all the information on the entire chain was completely in order, so there was no fear of you investigating. So one day, after work, Zhang Yi was walking home. When he passed a road corner, suddenly two heavily dressed secret agents emerged from the shadows. Zhang Yi was taken aback in a fake way. "Who are you? What do you want?" The two men said, "Mr. Wu Yanzu, don't be afraid, we have something to talk to you about." With that, one of the agents took an envelope directly from his breast pocket and handed it to him. It was a thick envelope, and Zhang Yi reached out to take it, squeezing it in his hands to check its thickness. "What do you want to talk to me about?" "Nothing in particular, we just want you to cook a meal. But the process needs to be kept confidential, so we hope you won't tell anyone about it." Zhang Yi hesitated for a moment before nodding and saying, "Okay, I'll go with you." Immediately, the two men led him to a black car. Zhang Yi got in the car. The windows were covered with curtains, and there was a baffle between the front and back rows, so it was impossible to see anything outside. Of course, everything was under Zhang Yi's control. The car drove off into the night, heading towards the border of the KG Kingdom. Olive, who had received the news, monitored the scene via satellite and said, "God bless you for successfully completing your mission, Lord Chaos." Zhang Yi may have seemed to be alone, but in fact he was carrying a large family with him, and the entire large group was advancing towards the KG Kingdom in a mighty procession. The car had been driving for a long time, and the road had begun to become bumpy. The infrastructure level of the KG Kingdom was indeed worrying. Later, the car seemed to have stopped moving and came to a halt in one place. But soon after, the sound of rumbling could be heard again. Zhang Yi could see nothing, but from what he had heard from Hyun Hae-soo, he guessed that they were boarding a train to Prison City, the capital of the KG Kingdom. "We won't arrive for a long time, so you can rest for a while." Zhang Yi couldn't help but ask, "Are we going somewhere very far away? How long will it take?" The other person didn't answer directly, but just told him, "You'll be there when you wake up from sleep." If it's really that far away, why not take a plane? Hearing Zhang Yi's innocent words, the agent next to him couldn't help but laugh. "A plane? Are you kidding? Guys like you probably haven't seen one of those since the Ice Age, have you?" The two men had no guard against Zhang Yi. After all, after their investigation, Zhang Yi's identity was clean. He was just a second-rate chef who had come to Euro from the Huashu Kingdom many years ago to work in a small restaurant cooking traditional Huashu cuisine. Well, his name was Wu Yanzu, an unremarkable name. "So," Wu Yanzu asked curiously, "isn't it faster to fly?" He really didn't take that thing because it was too slow. The agent explained to Zhang Yi, who looked like a bumpkin, before the end of the world, the aircraft of the KG Kingdom could fly normally, and the accident rate was not very high. But after the end of the world, ordinary aircraft simply cannot withstand long flights. Moreover, fuel is a huge problem. Today, there is only one airport in the entire KG Kingdom, located in Prison City. Only the commander and officials with the commander's permission are eligible to use it. Zhang Yi knew that Feijo was pretty poor, but he didn't realize it was this poor. But there was nothing he could do about it. He had to endure the tortoise-like speed of the train as it headed towards Prison City. While on the road, he tried to continue communicating with the two agents. Because from the very beginning, he could tell that these two were not as trained as the Iron Men portrayed in the movies. It was just that they didn't know much about the situation in Prison City, and when they came across potentially sensitive topics, they would choose to avoid them. This was very reasonable. 3 years after the end of the world, the people who survived were in the minority, and it was simply impossible to effectively train soldiers. Even in the 6 major regions of the Huashu Kingdom, the various departments were full of family members, or they had to put in a lot of second-rate people because they really lacked manpower. This world was originally a huge makeshift team. Zhang Yi waited for 5 or 6 hours, all the while bouncing along, nearly bouncing his butt to smithereens. The roads here were really bad, and the feeling was like being back in the remotest rural suburbs of Tianhai City. Oh no, it was even worse than that. The car finally stopped, and Zhang Yi was led by 2 agents into a magnificent manor. Yes, a manor. Time had already reached midnight, but the huge manor was brightly lit. One could see a huge villa in the center of the manor, which was probably larger than Zhang Yi's shelter in terms of area. The villa is surrounded by an even larger estate. Although the KG Kingdom is poor and backward, it has introduced advanced temperature isolation technology here. The entire estate is covered with a special material, like a super large house. It is fully heated. All kinds of flowers and trees in the middle of the estate are lush and green, and they must be pruned every day, making them very beautiful. There's also a huge swimming pool in front of the estate. All kinds of colorful lights are hung outside the house and above the greenery, making it look like some kind of important holiday. Zhang Yi did not have much time to look around before the agents took him to the back and had him go through a series of inspections. Well, that included an in-depth inspection that involved having his blood drawn and stripping naked. Of course, Zhang Yi could not possibly do such a thing. Not to mention that he could not accept having someone perform an internal examination with their hands. Just the idea of having his blood drawn was a violation of his taboos. Blood is an important medium for the law of cause and effect, and falling into the hands of a powerful ability user of the law of cause and effect could be fatal. Of course, none of this was a problem for Zhang Yi. In a backward place like KG Kingdom, the monitoring network and system were full of loopholes in front of his team, like a spider's web. Once they arrived, he no longer hid his abilities. Liu Karen directly hacked the network system and took over the entire network system of KG Kingdom, as simple as taking a candy from a drawer at home. The network in this place was so bad that it could no longer be described as having numerous loopholes. As for the inspection process, it was Yang Xinxin who took care of it, planting false memories in the minds of the staff. So after the whole process was easily completed, Zhang Yi was sent to the kitchen by them, and was asked to cook a few Guangdong dishes. Zhang Yi worked quickly and deftly, and really managed to prepare a large table of Guangdong dishes. These meals would be served at Commander Ken Sain's table. All Zhang Yi had to do next was wait. Time passed quickly. Half an hour later, Choi Jae, the captain of the personal guard, arrived in the kitchen with a few subordinates. As soon as he saw Choi Jae, Zhang Yi heard Hyun Haesu's nervous voice in his ear. He is Commander Sain's right-hand man, nicknamed the Snake. This person is not one of those useless people you have met before, but a real tough guy. Be careful not to let him find out. Hyun Haesu was extremely nervous. If he had to say who he was most afraid of in the KG Kingdom, it would not be the commander, but Choi Jae. It was because the commander would not pay too much attention to him. But Choi Jae, who worked for the commander, was always ruthless and would leave no room for compromise. When he and his wife fled to Hopu City, they thought they had gained their freedom, but in the end, he had them captured by his men. If he were not still of value to the church, he would have killed himself by now. Without being reminded by Hyun Haesu, Zhang Yi could sense how dangerous this man was just by looking at him. People who have killed too much carry a kind of malevolence within them, a coldness towards life. Zhang Yi also had this feeling, but he was better at disguising it by pretending to be a harmless little bunny, so he could hide this feeling. So when Choi Jae arrived, he saw an unremarkable cook who was looking at him with curiosity and a little nervousness. Choi Jae's eyes took a close look at Zhang Yi. He had already read the inspection report, which showed that there was nothing wrong with this person's personal information. The cook from the Huashu Kingdom, who had traveled across the ocean to make money, was named Wu Yanzu. He was an inability user, had an ordinary appearance, and a greedy and lustful personality. He was a guy who would jump at the chance to make money. Such a character perfectly met their needs. Because a money-loving person usually doesn't pose much of a threat, he will be loyal to whoever gives him money. For some reason, however, Choi Jae felt an uncomfortable feeling the first time he saw Zhang Yi. The feeling was subtle, but it made his body feel uneasy. It was the instinct of a murderer who had killed too many people and encountered an even more terrifying existence. However, Zhang Yi had concealed his identity well, and Choi Jae did not think that the intelligence system of the KG Kingdom would fail. Could it be that he is a chef and has killed too many people, which is why I feel this way? Choi Jae thought to himself. Indeed, a profession with blood on their hands too often gives the impression of cold-bloodedness. Butchers, cooks, and even doctors who perform surgery often. Choi Jae walked up to Zhang Yi and extended his right hand towards him. I am Choi Jae, captain of the commander's guards. Thank you for the delicious meal. His Excellency the commander was very happy after eating the meal you made. You are a meritorious person in the KG Kingdom. Zhang Yi quickly reached out and shook his hand. When shaking hands, Choi Jae exerted a slight force, and Zhang Yi quickly pretended to be in pain and let out a cry. Ah! What are you doing? Choi Jae silently withdrew his hand and smiled. Is the hand that holds the knife so weak? Zhang Yi shook his hand while looking at Choi Jae with dissatisfied eyes. Even the hand that holds the sword cannot touch the beast. Choi Jae stared at Zhang Yi and smiled. The commander wants to see you. Fix your appearance and follow me. Zhang Yi thought to himself, everything is going better than expected. He washed his hands and face, and wearing his chef's clothes, followed Choi Jae to where Commander Sane was. Along the way, he fully displayed the nervous, curious, and excited appearance of a small person arriving at the palace. These were familiar to him and did not require deliberate performance. They walked through long corridors and past magnificent halls until they finally arrived at Commander Sane's dining hall. Choi Jae led Zhang Yi into a huge room. There were guards everywhere, and in the middle of the dining hall was a long table that was at least 10 meters long. At the end of the long table sat the Supreme Commander of the KG Kingdom, Commander Ken Sane. He was tall, with shoulder-length blonde hair, but he was not black, but rather looked somewhat mixed race. Judging from his appearance, he looked more like someone from the Middle East. On the table were the dishes he had made, and the guards at his side were wearing clean white gloves and holding a bottle of Remy Martin cognac that looked quite old. Zhang Yi looked up, then quickly looked down. Now was the time to show off his acting skills. He must not let his guard down, or all his efforts would be in vain. Choi Jae approached the commander. Commander, I have brought the chef you requested. The commander lifted the wine glass in his hand and took a large gulp, then looked up at Zhang Yi. Leaning back in his chair, he asked in a gruff voice, "Are you the cook who can cook Guangdong cuisine? Are you from Guangdong province?" He spoke fluent in the native Huashu tongue. Zhang Yi hastened to say, "No, Commander. But I have been to East Guangdong and done business there." "Oh? Really?" The commander laughed. "I also did business there before, wholesaling clothes from East Guangdong and selling them to my compatriots in Feizhou." Zhang Yi said, "I also do clothing business." "Then you must have been to the 13 Hangs of East Guangdong?" The commander laughed heartily. "What a nostalgic name. I have indeed been to that place, but I did not wholesale goods from there. Clothes sold in Feizhou can only be sourced from small factories, because they are cheap enough." Zhang Yi's appearance and accent proved that he was from the Huashu Kingdom, and the commander felt much more at ease with him. Because Commander Sane was most wary of the few Euro countries in the north. He would never have thought that someone from the Huashu Kingdom, on the other side of the world, would do him harm. Moreover, the commander felt a sense of familiarity towards him due to their shared experience of having stayed in eastern Guangdong. He pointed at the food on the table and said, "The food you cook is not bad, but it's not top-notch. 10 years ago, when I was in eastern Guangdong, I had the best food there." He became picky. Zhang Yi, of course, had an explanation. "Commander, these are different times. It's hard to get fresh ingredients these days, so everything is frozen or canned. But when it comes to cooking, Wu Yanzu, am second to none in eastern Guangdong." He put on a deliberately proud expression, as if a second-rate chef was trying to prove himself. This made Commander Sane laugh out loud. "Hey, times have changed. It's true that it's hard to find authentic Guangdong cuisine these days. Well, your cooking is not bad. From now on, you can stay here and cook for me," he said heroically. Zhang Yi's face immediately showed hesitation. This. Choi Jae glanced at him and said, "It is your honor to cook for the commander. You will definitely not be underpaid." A light flashed in Zhang Yi's eyes. He swallowed and asked, "How much will you pay me?" The currency commonly used in the KG Kingdom today is the material exchange voucher. After all, in an era of material scarcity, everything is supplied by ticket, which is in line with the current social situation. Choi Jae said, "Every month, you will be given 500 jin of rice, 30 jin of meat, and 2 boxes of canned vegetables as basic supplies. If you do a good job, there will be a bonus. In addition, the state will allocate you a 3-bedroom, 1 living room house from prison for you to live in." This salary level is already quite high, because in Feizhou, where supplies are scarce, ordinary people can't even eat rice. Zhang Yi revealed a satisfied expression after hearing this. At this time, the commander spoke. He pointed at Choi Jae and said, "How can this be enough? A man will definitely feel lonely if he doesn't have a woman by his side. Arrange for him to have another woman. He said angrily, men will make mistakes because of women. My last chef did just that, betraying me for a woman. I really don't know what was going through his mind. By the way, Choi Jae. Where exactly did Hyun Hae-soo go? Have you found him? Choi Jae snapped back to reality and nodded, saying, Commander, we have not heard from him yet. Most likely, he is already frozen to death in the snow. Without your protection, Commander, he is nothing but a trivial little person. Death is the end he deserves. The commander replied indifferently, this is what happens when you don't know how to appreciate your blessings. In shadow space, Hyun Hae-soo's face was ghastly and he was shaking all over. He clenched his fists. But soon he heard something else that made him almost lose control. What should we do with his wife? Do you still want to enjoy her? The commander leaned back in his chair and thought lazily before sighing. Her husband is dead, and she has become just an ordinary woman, which is very boring. Send her to the farms around prison and let her participate in the labor to redeem herself. Hyun Hae-soo's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Sung-mi, Sung-mi. He covered his head in pain. Jo Kir saw this and asked with concern, are you okay? Please don't worry too much, we will help you rescue the person as promised. Hyun Hae-soo covered his head in pain. But you don't know how bad the conditions are on those farms. If Sung-mi goes there, she'll die. Jo Kir was silent for a moment, then said, but at least she's not with Commander Sane anymore. It'll be easier to save her, won't it? All you have to do now is help us complete our mission. We promise, we'll take you home. Home? Hyun Hae-soo looked up, his eyes brimming with tears. God knows how these simple words moved him. Yes, I want to go home. I want to take Sung-mi back to the Hwashu kingdom with me. Even if we die, we don't want to die in a foreign land. Inside the restaurant, Zhang Yi acted as if he was very satisfied with the treatment he received as a cook. But soon, when Commander Sane had someone bring in a girl who looked like dark chocolate, his expression changed. This will be your wife from now on. You must cherish your life here and devote yourself to serving the commander. Choi Jae said to Zhang Yi.